Well, let's just move on. We might as well just get rolling. Let's welcome our third guest here, and our final guest for tonight, Grammy Award-winning bass guitarist with this band that you may have heard of before called Megadeth, I think, right? I think some people heard about them before. Mr. David Ellefson, what's up, Dave? How you doing?
Gentlemen, how are you? How you doing?
Doing great, man. Thanks a lot for coming on. So let's talk about the new record coming out. No cover, all cover songs. You got some really unique and different bands that you decided to pay homage to on the record. Obviously, you got classic bands like Priest and Motorhead and AC/DC, but you also covered Fight, Fastway, BTO, Crocus. I mean, a little bit more obscure bands that you usually don't see too many people cover. Obviously, you love doing covers. Then your projects with Hail and Metal Allegiance. Yeah. I mean, does your penchant, for doing cover songs, does it stem from like the fact that over the years with Megadeth, you guys didn't really do a lot of cover songs, or is it just because you just want to celebrate the music pretty much?
No, it's funny. I've come full circle. I started playing covers, been in Megadeth, and now I'm back playing covers. So maybe I'll finish where I started,
Yeah.
No, the truth of it is for 20 years or so, when we started Megadeth in 83, up until the group disbanded in 2002 there for a few years, I didn't do anything other than Megadeth. I mean, I did one co-write with Flotsam and Jetsam. I wrote a music business book. But other than that, I mean, my whole life, singular focus was Megadeth. And we had to, in order to just, be, to just, achieve what we wanted to do, you had to. But, when that thing came to an end there in 2002, I sat there and I was like, well, now what the hell am I going to do with the rest of my life? I was only 38 years old. I was pretty young, certainly still a lot of music in me. And so I did a few things, F5 and Temple of Brutalities, a few little, music things kind of, I got invited to be part of, or I, sort of developed around me. But one of the things that started to happen was sometimes doing some jams with my buddies. One at NAMM happened, with Tim Ripper Owens and Jason Bittner, and I think one or two of the guys from Chimera. And we just played some Priest tunes. It's kind of stuff that we all knew and we all played. Mm-hmm. And that spun into well, it's funny, right around that same time I think the year after that, I did another jam at NAMM for Randy Bachman.
Okay.
And I was doing artist relations for Peavey at the time. And so Randy became an artist with Peavey. And I told Randy, I said, man, you are the whole reason I'm even in this mess called the music business, from the Not Fragile record. And so he was going to do a jam. So I called Jimmy DeGrasso up because I knew Jimmy could come in and play, do the drumming sight unseen, sit down and knock the parts out. And he did. And so we played American Woman and Taking Care of Business at the Hilton there at NAMM in Anaheim. And I mean, that was like being in a cover band, but like with the guy who wrote the song, and, I got to do that as well with Ronnie Montrose. Jimmy DeGrasso actually called me for that gig. And we did the Montrose gig for a couple years, which was super fun. And I had a little band called Hail that started out, that we went down to South America. It was me and Andreas, Jimmy DeGrasso, and Tim Ripper Owens, and we went across Chile, and then we went over to Scandinavia. Roy Mayorga joined us on drums for that one, and we went down to Greece and Turkey, and and those were all just playing cover songs. It was fun, and it was this weird moment where fans really loved seeing their idols on stage, like in these odd setting. Again, me, a guy, former Judas Priest, Jimmy, of course, is formerly a Megadeth. He was in Alice Cooper's band, I think, at the time. And Andreas, who's as cool as they get in metal. And just seeing these kind of random collection of people playing songs from our record collection. And I really got to appreciate that. Number one, we're kind of all the same age. We all share the same record collection. We all grew up on the same stuff. But also that, how much fun it was to just, that was kind of our common ground. When I was growing up as a kid, when there were jam sessions, they were usually like 12-bar blues jams, which to me were a little I guess if you drank enough, you could play all night. You know what I mean? But I'd rather play the songs that were my anthems growing up. So I think that's kind of where the spirit of this whole no cover record went. Was we Tom and Hazard and I, we sat down. I mean, literally came up with like 5 or 6 tunes, and it was 10 songs, and then it was 15 songs, and I just saw Tom just sent me the layout of the record, and I think now it's a total of 19 songs we have on this thing. So it's a double album, double CD. I mean, we just just went off the rails. It was fun.
Awesome, man. Yeah, and by the way, I had that music business book you put out back in the mid-90s there. That was the first music business book I bought, and I don't know if I should thank you or not thank you for getting me into the music business because of it, but
yeah, well,
but it was cool.
Yeah, I know. It's like exactly. I know. It's like, is this a blessing or a curse?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, another really cool thing about the record too, which will, I think, please a lot of the old school Megadeth fans, is that you got a couple of old bandmates that have joined you on the record. Yeah. You got Chuck Baylor's on there, who played drums, obviously, on So Far, So Good, So What, and Greg Handevidt, who was the original guitarist, and it was your buddy from back in Minnesota that you moved to LA with back in the early 80s, right? So what was like recording with Greg after so many years? I mean, did you have any of those sort of like nostalgic flashbacks making music with him again?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I was, it's so funny because we talked about, as you notice, like you said, we Crocus, BTO, some very, very different artists. We didn't want it to be sort of your, the bar standards, Breaking the Law, Cold Gin, the songs we've all played, and I played with Metal Allegiance, and we played them in a bunch of different settings. We didn't really want to go for those obvious songs. They're great, and there's a reason they're standards, because they're amazing, right? And everybody, no matter how drunk they are, they can sing them. You know what I mean? Highway to Hell. You know what I mean? We all know the repertoire, right? But on this record, I wanted to really go into the songs that I played growing up, and the conversation of Motorhead came up, and I said, look, I don't want to do Ace of Spades and come of that. But and then it hit me, oh my God, me and Greg Handevidt used to play Love Me Like a Reptile. In fact, he talked about it in my last autobiography that I did, More Life with Death, and he told a funny story how back in Minnesota growing up, we'd have to play 4 sets a night. To play the ballrooms, you'd use 4 45-minute sets from like 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. And then when we would get hired for dances, like to play proms and stuff, we'd have one set list that was like pop, like the lighter stuff, Eddie Money, 38 Special, this kind of stuff. But then in reality, we'd come in and we'd play like Wrathchild and Love Me Like a Reptile and all this metal stuff, and it took me back to that. I go, oh my God, I got to call Greg and have him play on this song. I mean, and Greg sang it great. So we got Greg singing it, Tom and Doro. So all 3 of them are trading off on it. And Greg, I had him play guitar, rhythm pass, and also do a lead solo on it. So yeah, it was really great. Greg's just, he's just that guy. He's really was my best friend growing up, and he's a lawyer in Mankato, Minnesota now. But he still plays, and so it's fun to just we call each other up, and it's like we just talked yesterday.
Yeah,
sure.
Awesome.
Now, David, what's interesting to me, especially when I see a project like this, and I've watched a bunch of you and Tom's, the casts that you guys do, where you talked a lot about these musicians. What really strikes me is, for a musician that's at your level, which is, obviously the very highest level, you got a Grammy, for God's sakes. So, you're at the highest level that there could be. You really have maintained those relationships with bands of all levels from the start of your career till now. And that's unusual. A lot of guys, they let the bands as they arise, those people that didn't come with them are kind of left behind. What is it about you where you've kept relationships for all of these decades at this point?
Probably my parents. They certainly get the credit. They raised me well. They get all the credit for that. I grew up on a farm in Minnesota, and it was, the music business is definitely a bullshit business. I remember going home, after I'd been in LA for a little bit when I was like 18, 19 years old. And my dad says, like, your business is nothing but a bunch of con men and shysters. Yeah, pretty much. You know, that is what it is. Bunch of swindlers and fucking bullshitters, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is what it is, as we know. And you know, that yet at the same time, you know, it's the circus, man. And you know, it's like, look, people don't pay for ordinary, they pay for extraordinary. You know, that's the truth of it. And so, you know, we're all in this because we can play. We're all in this because we can do our part. So I think, you know, if you're in the room, you know, we're no longer talking about who's better than who and who's got better licks than that. That's like high school level stuff. You know, if you're in the room, obviously you're here because you're one of the guys or one of the girls. You're, you know, and I have to include girls because we got a lot of kick-ass females now in the metal world with us, which is great. But you know, for me, it's always about friendships, you know, and I had this, you know, kind of this mantra I had, I don't know, back in the 2000s, I guess, because there was a stretch, you know, where, you know, Megadeth was together and I wasn't part of it there for a couple records. But, you know, my real feeling, and this is maybe just more of me being an adult now, is like, you know what, I only want to make music I like with people I like. I don't want to be around people I don't like anymore, you know. And sometimes, you know, you call someone in because they're just great at what they do. And, you know, you go, all right, suck it up. Deal with the bullshit. You're going to have to deal with it because this person is amazing and that's what they do. And then you just kind of try to limit your exposure to some of that crap. And that's also part of being a professional. You know, you have to do that. And that's like that in any business, whether you're a golfer, a lawyer, a doctor, whatever, a plumber, whatever it is, there's that, you got to deal with that in life, you know? So, and that's just kind of a maturity, I think, that comes along with that. But, yeah, I mean, you know, even over the years when we've done various things, you know, Dave Mustaine will always come to me and say, hey, Junior, you know, can you reach out to so-and-so? And, you know, you're the diplomat, you know, you're the ambassador of the community. So like if we did it behind the music, I'm the one who called Chris Poland and Jeff Young and, you know, you know, it's funny, man, when you've made a record with guys, you've gotten, you know, not naked, but you know, proverbially kind of drop trow together, if you will, you know what I mean? And I don't mean to sound gross, but there is when you're writing a song and showing somebody something, like you really got to be invested in the song and you really got to put your life into it. And if it's going to be great, if it's going to reach other people, if it's going to reach other listeners, you really got to put your heart out there. And, you know, it's hard to sometimes put that out there around people because what if they don't like it? What if they reject it? What if they, you know, and that is just, you know, I don't care who you are or how much of a badass you think you are. That is a real moment, you know, it's an emotional moment. So when you've made a record with guys, you've gone deep down into a rabbit hole together to really push and encourage and find strengths and weaknesses. And we all have weaknesses and even more so when you then go out and live together on the road for a year or 2 or 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 years together, you know, you know, when you put some miles on the life together with some guys and girls, whatever, you know, your bandmates, that's just a different path, man. And that's something you share forever. So Chuck Beeler, you know, we did one record and a tour together, but man, Chuck and I will always be kind of musically joined at the hip, man. It's like as soon as I did a Bass Story show last year, went through Detroit, I called him up and said, Chuck, you need to get up on stage and play. We're going to play the Token Lounge where Megadeth played in 1987, the night that actually might have been 86, actually the night that the Peace Cells video debuted on MTV. At that place, and you became our drum tech, and I want you to be on that stage playing a couple songs that we recorded together. And man, as soon as we played together, I'd stopped in the middle of the show and I said, dude, I now I remember why I love playing with you. You're just amazing. No one plays like you play, Chuck. And he and I there's a brotherhood that'll just always be there, you know? So, you know, this No Cover record was a chance to kind of call everybody up and get us all back together and have a big block party during the pandemic shutdown, you know?
Sure.
Dude, you know, you mentioned it about putting it out there and letting people, you know, letting people vent to you and really being affected by it, whether it's public or privately. How do you handle when fans don't like something? You know, obviously fans don't like Risk. Obviously fans don't really like Super Collider. I know you know that, you know, you have a very different perspective than any of us do. We just hear it after not hearing anything new for X amount of years and go, okay, it's great, or it's shit, or what, you know. You have the whole creative growth with it. How do you react to it when people don't like what you're doing? Can't hear you. Cannot hear you. Might have to reconnect, sir. What's going on? No, don't hear you. Let me unmute. Cannot hear you, sir.
Come back. Okay.
All right.
Oh, let's just come back on.
I'll be back on in a minute.
Yeah.
Look at in the chat room. Mustaine cut his line.
Nice. There we go.
Let's see.
All right, we're back. How's
there
that?
We are.
There we go. Okay, sorry about that. I'm
That's
traveling right now. I'm actually traveling to California, and I pulled off into a parking lot. Someone called on my phone. So sorry about that.
Okay.
I know these things because we use StreamYard as well for our
sure.
For our streams. So, but yeah, you know, it's funny, you know, with when we were doing the Super Collider record, there were Risk-like moments that kept coming into my head, and I was just going, I don't know, I think I've seen this movie before, you know, and you know, I just kind of had to go with it because those weren't really my songs, and you know, I'm there as a member of the band and a member amongst members, so we go as the team goes, you know. But you know, so there are these moments, you know, and I think, you know, the thing of it is, I think no matter what it is, you can tell pretty much right away whether you know, especially right when something comes out, you know, right away, okay, is this getting thumbs up or is this getting kind of an you know, and you know, lukewarm is better than thumbs down, but boy, you know, it can be a long journey when you put something out and people are kind of like, not what we expected. They move on because it's hard to get people back. You know, and you know, so again, some things there's enough of a history that, you know, it's easier to kind of bounce back from. Sometimes you put some things out and they just don't respond very well. And sometimes you got to just sort of cut bait and move on from them and sort of leave your emotion out of it.
Is there anything you think the fans were just straight up wrong on?
Look, fans are never wrong because they're the ones that are buying it. You know what I mean? Right. And I'm not talking about just the cash consumer transaction. I'm talking about as a fan listening to it. You know what I mean? And I speak as a fan myself. You know, when I've bought my Kiss records or Van Halen records or Judas Priest or whoever that I bought over the years, you know, I pretty much know right away when something comes roaring out of the speakers. I'm like, yes, awesome, you know. Or when it takes me a while to get kind of into it. I remember as a Bachman Turner Overdrive fan as a kid, you know, the Not Fragile record was just amazing, top to bottom, just amazing. Mm-hmm. And then the next record, Four Wheel Drive, pretty much same thing. And then the one after that, I went head on. I was like, what the hell is this? Like, this is hit and miss. And then the one after that, I was like, all right, now you lost me, you know. and so I know as a fan, you know, Cheap Trick Records, same thing. You know, when they come, I was listening to Dream Police the other day, and you know, pretty much In Color, you know.
Damn it.
I hope did I lose you there again?
No, we got you.
Apologies. Did I lose you again?
No, we got you.
Okay. You know, there's like kind of 3 in a row, In Color, Heaven Tonight, and Dream Police that were just could do no wrong. You know, they were just amazing. So I get it, you know, and then, you know, maybe the next record, they get a little exploratory or maybe what happens is the world changes too, you know. Then that's one thing that when you're an artist making records, like, you know, you have a sound, and what fans like about your sound is that it's unwavering. It really doesn't change. And suddenly either you change, which fans aren't usually that big on, or maybe around you stuff happens, you know. In the by the mid 90s, you know, Seattle music came in, new metal came in, you know, the landscape around us was changing. And, So there's now young new music listeners coming in. They're buying new records. I remember we had Korn out on tour with us on Euthanasia, you know, and every night they'd start, you know, the show with that da 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 da, you know, and Jonathan Davis would do that. Are you ready? And I'll never forget. I was at a meeting, and there was a bunch of young teenagers there, and I remember these young girls were sitting over there. They had some tats and piercings and stuff, and I remember the one was saying to each other, "Are you ready?" And it caught my ear right away, and I went, "That right there is a Korn fan," and that's the future of where heavy metal's going, you know. Right. And it wasn't at a concert; it was just in a room, you know. And because I know how I was, I met Greg Handevitt in the hallway of of my grade school because I had a Kiss T-shirt on, or he had it on. I forgot what it was. One of us had a Kiss T-shirt on, and it struck up a conversation about Kiss, and that was our language. That was our bro language, you know, for the next, you know, 10 years, you know. So it's funny how we meet over stuff, you know, that you know, the commonalities of music that bring us together.
Yeah. No, sure. Hey, Dave, every time, you know, I see you, you know, you're releasing something new, you know, whether it's a record now or a new venture, whether it's, you know, your guys' label, EMP Combat, or your coffee, there's always another name attached to yours that you mentioned before, Tom Hazard. Mm-hmm. I'm just interested, man. What's your guys' story? How did you guys want to partner up to do all these ventures that you guys do together?
Well, it's funny, you know, Tom, you know, I always say, and I said this in my memoir, More Life with Death, you know, everybody needs a cheerleader. You know what I mean? Look, we're not meant to go through life alone. No one's a solo project. Some people think they are, but they're not. And, you know, we need a team, and we need a group of people around. And, you know, Tom initially started, you know, first back in 2015, when we had a previous conversation. He was managing Chimera back maybe around 2007 or 8 when I was working for Peavey, and we had a brief conversation. And in fact, I remember his voice because he's got a very distinct voice, obviously. And then in 2015, he rang me up, and he was putting together Shout Factory was doing a re-release of the Wes Craven movie Shocker. Mm-hmm. And Shocker had a really compelling soundtrack to it. Megadeth was on it with Norman Mr. Nice Guy. Alice Cooper's guitar player, Kane Roberts, had something on there, Desmond Child. It was a very cool, maybe Mark Slaughter. I forgot who it was. There was a lot of cool artists on it. And Tom was really championing, this soundtrack being part of this re-release, which it was. And so that's how he got to me, you know, and I've, you know, I keep my distance from being too available to, you know, to just everybody, but I also try to be approachable, you know. So he got to me, and we had a conversation, and I remembered him, and that was really where it started, was around that. And around that same time, I was producing some things, and that's when he said, he goes, "Listen, why don't we start a record company?" He goes, "I've had them before. I've owned them. I know how to put them together." And he did, and he knew what he was doing, and so, you know, kind of little by little, I let him kind of into my world. And as Megadeth was touring, and of course making records and touring, and then, you know, but I realized, I go, you know, you're always kind of thinking of what's sort of after this, you know. I already had an experience. Megadeth had disbanded once before, so it could happen again. I don't think it will, but, you know, hopefully we'll just ride it out to the very end now. But you know, and in life also, it's nice to be a little wider sometimes with your interests as well. And so Tom and I, you know, he's really just been a good friend and a good supporter to me. You know, he knows my role, obviously, in Megadeth. He knows my role in sort of the world of hard rock and metal music and everything. And so he's really been a great friend and a supporter. He's got great ideas, and he's got the same focus and energy and sort of tireless energy that I do, which is nice. It's nice to have a partner like that, you know, that we can build things up together and do things that help our community, our music community, and you know, created some things with the record label, and now we've got this film distribution company, and this or not a distribution company, but a production company, and now you know, the Ellefson book company, and these things that we're doing as platforms to be able to help our friends put things out as well, because a lot of musicians and artists and creators have content, and they're just always looking for how do we get this out to the public. And I feel really blessed that we've got these pipelines, you know, that people can pass things through us, and, you know, to get their creative work out to the world.
Sure. Yeah, no doubt. And speaking of your record company, bringing back Combat Records, how has it been now being on the executive side of things when all those years you were on the other side as a musician?
Well, it's not too much different, because honestly, I'm the one guy who always paid attention to that, you know, and, you know, I've always would ask managers over the years, you know, like when I was writing that music business book, you know, our manager at that time, Bud Prager, who worked with us on the Cryptic Writings record that I guess I started writing it during the Euthanasia record, and it came out at the downbeat of Cryptic Writings. But, you know, so I went to him and asked him about a few things if I had questions. And before that, we had a manager, Ron Lafitte, who managed us from, Rust in Peace, Countdown through Euthanasia. And I would always ask Ron things, and he was young. I mean, he was my age, maybe a little younger actually. And so he was learning the business, you know, from you know, as a young guy. He'd been a tour manager for Armored Saints, so he was a young guy learning the business, and you know, he's now at the top of he manages Pharrell Williams now. He's at the top of the heap. Damn. And yeah, so, you know, he's done very well, but we're still remain good friends. And, you know, so I always respected that, you know, I could go to him and say, all right, teach me about music publishing. What is this, and like, how does it work? And you know, so I learned about these things. In fact, I'm always astonished when I talk to some people, and there are a lot of musicians who are very well versed, especially if they've been ripped off a time or two. You learn really quickly about your business. But I'm always amazed at some people that they've been in the business as long as they have, and they know nothing about the business they're in, you know?
Sure.
And they've just been creators their whole life, and they've probably had managers and people dealing with stuff, and that's fine. But I'm not a guy who can do that. And again, probably being raised by my father, you know, in Minnesota, he was very much a businessman, and he would always encourage me, you know, don't be flying blind here, you know, like learn your craft, learn your business, and know what goes on in your industry, you know, just because you don't want to wake up one day at 40 or 50 years old and go, oh my God, I have nothing. What happened? You know? You'll be too tired to get it back.
True, yeah.
Right? No, you're right. Well, let me ask you a business question then, Dave, as somebody, and I've asked every artist this that I've interviewed for the last 10 years. I've asked it 1,000 times. Every artist gives me the I don't know answer, which to me is criminal, but maybe you do because you're on the inside.
Okay.
We all know that we lost you. God,
sorry.
Nope,
all right. Hang on. There we go.
There we go.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, we all know that Spotify and YouTube Music and YouTube has kind of taken over and the world. And everybody complains that they don't get paid or they don't get paid enough and blah, 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 blah. Now, I understand that the old catalog, the heritage catalog, is sucked into that by the deals that were signed.
Yeah.
But for the new music that bands are putting out, like you with your Sleeping Giants record, or you know, a Dokken or Jeff Scott Soto or whoever now,
right?
Do you guys not have control over that, where you can say, hey, only put 2 songs of the album out there instead of the whole thing? Because it just seems like the whole thing is detrimental to people. It tells people don't buy it. It's here for free.
Well, look, you know, it's the shopping, it's the grocery store where everybody's buying their groceries. So if you want to sell your product, or at least have the awareness of it, it behooves you to put your releases in the Spotify stores, right? And certainly Steve Jobs, look, he single-handedly, and it's because of his relationships that he built in Hollywood, you know, with Katzenberg and Geffen and these guys. You know, when he was away from Apple for a season, and you know, it helped him build Pixar, and he did all these things because he had connections in Hollywood. And that when he came and built the iTunes store, look, he did it. It was self-serving. He had a device called an iPod, and he needed some content. So he goes, look, if I can be my own supply chain, I'll get the songs. They can put them in my device. Now we win twice. We're selling the music, and we're selling, you know, iPods, now iPhones, of course. So, I mean, he was genius in that. But he, of course, has he stopped the Napsters, which were just bleeding us out. And of course, we all remember, you know, and I think Metallica was 100% absolutely right for fighting that. And they got a lot of shit. And we were told by our manager not to comment and weigh in on it because it was such a hot button topic at the time.
Right.
But, you know, Lars said, look, we can afford this. You know, we got the money. Let us fight this battle. And you know, unfortunately, it was a losing battle. But they at least had the fortitude to go up against it, and it was hard because, you know, look, they're, you know, perceivably they're rich, and they're Metallica's just fighting to make more money, and they weren't. They were fighting to essentially stop the landslide that we are now in.
Right.
And you know, fortunately, Steve Jobs came along, and with iTunes, made it all legitimate, and he pays well. You know, the sort of 50 cents on the dollar. That went to the record labels, and then whatever our deals are with the labels, we get our participation of that from Apple. But at least Apple was very fair in what they pay. Same with Sirius Radio, which I listen to when I'm in the car. You know, I look at my BMI statements and my accountings, the royalties I get from Sirius Radio are quite healthy because it's subscription based. So they've got an extra, you know, stream of income that comes in, and they pay very well. They pay every time I just saw 3 Megadeth songs played on my drive here to California. So, you know, not a bad hit, you know, it's okay,
Yeah.
you know, but they take care of us. But, you know, the Spotify thing, you know, here's one thing about it. And Kiko actually educated me on this a little bit because him being foreign, of course, being from Brazil and lives in Finland now as well, you know, everything in America is tied to the copyright holder, right? Because our law is all based around copyright.
Right.
Outside of the US, it's not necessarily the case. So you can be paid more money outside of the US because it's not tied to copyright. But here in the US, it's all about the copyright holder. So, you know, Combat Records becomes a copyright holder, Universal Records for Megadeth, et cetera, et cetera. So they're the copyright holders, you know. And even though we may be the author of a song, they're the copyright holders of the actual performance on that master recording. So this is the stuff I'm talking about. It goes very deep, and it's a math class, you know, to get into the details of it. But you know, it's that thing that, you know, look, remember over the years, the Beatles, they didn't have their stuff on Apple because obviously there was a litigation between Apple Records and Apple computers.
Right.
You know, AC/DC fought it for many years. I'd heard that their you know, AC/DC's math was, look, we make more money selling entire albums than just selling singles of Back in Black on iTunes, you know, and at some point apparently that must have changed because finally AC/DC's on iTunes, and you know, so again, you can kind of hold out as, you know, as long as you can, but at the same time, it's, you know, I hate to say, if you can't beat them, join them. But at some point, if that's the way the world's going, you know, you want to stay in the business, you know, you kind of have to pay attention to that, you know. So, you know, yeah, look, I'll be honest with you. It's, you know, you could make more money on Spotify stock than you could on having your own songs on Spotify. I assure you. You know,
right.
So, you know, but it's a shame because we have not been compensated fairly. In fact, I remember my daughter wanted a Spotify subscription, and I pulled out my BMI statement and I showed her. I said, "Look, this is how much I make from radio, from Sirius, etc." I said, "By the way, here's 130,000 hits of the song that I co-wrote with Megadeth, and I think I made $1.03 off of this."
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So I said, you know, if you really want one and you like the house we live in, then, you know, I don't know, I'd probably prefer you don't get the Spotify subscription, but it was an education. You know, she was young. She's 21 now, but she was, you know, a young teenager at the time. And, you know, everything she liked, Taylor Swift and Bruno Mars and everything that she liked, that's where it was. And that's where that's the well they were going to get music. So young people drive, obviously, new music. And if, you know, new music is always the future, because if there's nothing new coming down the pipeline, pretty soon the pipeline dries up, you know. So it's, I think having kids has kept my ear to the ground and kept me alert and awake to the changing trends of the business as well.
No doubt. Before we let you go, Dave, I would be remiss if I did not ask you about the charitable thing that you're doing, the the David Ellefson Youth Music Foundation, which is it's a great cause. And it's even more great at this time with the pandemic, with, everything turned up on its ear. And certainly music could be one of those things that everybody forgets about, with the education system. So talk a little bit about how that's been going for you and how it's growing as an organization.
It's been great. And, the thing that really, I think got, really right from the beginning, the Grammy Music Education Coalition got on board with it. And, the Grammys, of course, we think of them as the TV show, and they've got 4 pillars of the Recording Academy. One, of course, is the TV show, and that's the big thing we see. They got the Grammy Museum downtown. They've got Music Care, downtown LA, that is. And they've got Music Cares, which is an association set up for healthcare and needs for musicians. And then they have now the Grammy Music Education Coalition. And they had just started it right as we were launching the David Ellefson Youth Music Foundation. So they brought us in. Of course, Megadeth, we just won our Grammy. So the timing was perfect to get, that wind in our sails and to be included with them. And so they've been so supportive. And of course, that's a big cannon, when they push that stuff out, there's big awareness around it, so that was a big help. Inside of the organization, what we do, with raising money to be able to give instruments, we've donated instruments to kids during this time who were in need, which has really been great. And of course, we've got a lot of great partners with that, with Samson and Harkey and my Jackson Guitars endorsement and stuff. But, but be able to raise the money that we've been able to bring in through donations. And the other big thing that really happened at the beginning of the year was the Schools Out initiative that we did, where we gave the free lessons to students. It was originally just going to be in America, and then as the world shut down, we realized there's people all around the world. So we've been giving lessons to people from Argentina and Eastern Europe to Texas to Chicago, all over the world. So it's really been fantastic, and that's just a beautiful thing to be able to do, to keep people inspired. I know myself, the more I'm, creating, the less I'm creating problems for myself. I'm, less I'm in my head. And I realized a lot of our communities, like tours were going away. Everybody's freaking out, going, "Oh my God, my livelihood." And I said, "Hey, listen, can you come over here? Look, give a couple lessons. We can't get right now. We can't even pay you. Just if you could just do a couple for free, to just help some kids out." And then, then we were able to raise a little bit of cash, and which was nice through that awareness that we got. But it was great, because what I found is when we got our hand in someone else's hand and we're helping them, we're not worrying about our own problems, and sometimes all we need to do is just get out of our way long enough that the good Lord or the universe or whatever reminds us I don't need your help running your own life. Get out of the way, help someone else, help one of the other kids out there that needs a hand, and I'll take care of everything for you. And that's really been a lesson I've learned, it's just, get out of the way and let the good Lord run my life for me,
Sure. No question. Yeah. Well, David, why don't you give the plugs where people can keep up with you and with your 434,000 projects that you have?
Well, they should all be kind of funneled into davidellefson.com. I got all my social media pushes through there, so that should be where most of it is. Facebook, of course, is David Ellefson. YouTube is David Ellefson. And then we have a Bandcamp right now, bandcamp.com. I think it's just bandcamp.com/Ellefson. And that is where you can buy 3 of the songs from the No Cover record are up there.
Cool.
And also we have an Indiegogo, and I don't have the exact link for that, but if you go to indiegogo.com and type in Ellefson, we got an Indiegogo in there. In fact, actually, it's funny, we're actually turning the record in on Friday. We got to get turned in for manufacturing, and we've been doing a fun little thing where people can make a little bit of a donation, because we're doing all the heavy lifting on this. Everybody who played on it, they did it for free. It was just a fun thing we did. Cool. But there's still some expenses. Sure. So, all this stuff, man, is DIY. This is like putting my first band together again. It's like, oh my God, now we need sound and lights and a PA and a car. Oh my God. You know what I mean? So it's like, it never ends. It's just a business rent. But there is an Indiegogo, and that'll, help cover, some of the expenses that we have just manufacturing the thing. But it's pretty fun because you can get your name in the album if you want. There's a little donation thing, kind of a support thing for that. So yeah, Indiegogo.com, and I think it's just /Ellefson or something.
Very good.
Great.
Yeah. Well, David, thanks so much for coming
thanks,
on.
Dave.
And,
welcome.
We'll do this again when you have the either No Cover or the Megadeth record on a shelf somewhere.
Sounds good. Sounds good, you guys. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate it, Dave. Take care, man.
Yep. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to Aftershocks. For more episodes, go to our website at www.aftershockspodcast.com. Visit us on our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages for more news and information on the podcast. And be sure to subscribe, listen to, and review all episodes on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all other podcast platforms. For your music listening pleasure, visit our website or go to www.shockwavesradio.com. For all comments and questions, please email us at info@aftershockspodcast.com.